What's up, guys? Jacob over here. So it's been a couple of days since the Bucks lost to the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we've all had some time to think it over, to collect our thoughts, collect our minds, and as I look back on this season, really it was tremendous. It was awesome, and they exceeded any expectation anybody had for them, including my own. And I just, as disappointing as this season ended, I just can't look past just how awesome it was. And I think even if the Bucks win championships in the next few years, they win multiple championships, I'm still always going to remember this year because it was the year that I think it was the year the Bucks broke out. It was the year that the Bucks said, "Hey, we're here. We're a contender. We're someone you have to fear." And it was also the year that Giannis developed into legitimate MVP, and I think he will win the MVP this year. He was the best player on the best team throughout the entire regular season. I saw a lot of the votes for who in the media was voting for which player, and it was pretty overwhelmingly in favor of Giannis. So I really anticipate that it is going to be Giannis winning the MVP this year, which is awesome because now we're going to have our trifecta of Rodgers, Yelich, and Giannis all being MVPs in their respective sport. And imagine if Aaron Rodgers wins MVP next year. We're going to have three MVPs all within the same year and a half. That's just unbelievable. But really, the Bucks going forward this off season, there's going to be some tough decisions to make. I think one thing that I think the two things that I really want them to do is re-sign Brook Lopez and re-sign Malcolm Brogdon. Those are the two guys to me that I just do not want to lose because I feel like they're kind of irreplaceable for the Bucks. I mean, they were a big reason why the Bucks were as good as they were this year, and they're both pretty unheralded players. They don't get a whole lot of attention for what they do, but they are extremely important when you factor everything into it. Like Brook Lopez, the way he spreads the floor for the Bucks, the way he opens up the lane for Giannis, and the ability to knock down threes from absurd range, and not only that, but his rim protection, which is super underrated. He's one of the best shot blockers in the league. He's one of the most feared rim protectors in the entire NBA. His value to me, this is his value at what we got him for last offseason was just amazing. We got to find a way to bring this guy back. I mean, we just can't let him go at any cost. If someone else is going to offer him something absurd, you know what? Do it. Just offer him something absurd in retaliation. You just have to keep Brook Lopez to me. And the other guy who I think is irreplaceable, outside of, Giannis and whatever, to me, it's Malcolm Brogdon. He is a 40% three-point shooter. He's a 50-40-90 player. It's really hard to replace a player like that. He's just a guy who does a lot of little things that you don't really notice too much. And really, I saw a little bit of attention to his 50-40-90 season, but really, nobody talked about it at all this season. It was all about Giannis, and I understand that, but Malcolm Brogdon had a historically great season this year, and nobody mentioned it at all. We got to keep Malcolm Brogdon. We got to keep Brook Lopez. Then you move on to guys like George Hill, who I'm still kind of fuzzy on what his situation is. I've seen that he's signed through next year, but I've been seeing people saying, "Oh, we should waive him and give him the vet minimum or something." I'm kind of confused about that. But obviously, George Hill, his veteran presence cannot be understated. I really want George Hill to be on the Bucks next season because he was a huge difference maker for the Bucks, and you could possibly make an argument that the Bucks don't win the Celtics series without him. He was an enormous help off the bench for the Bucks. Another guy who really made a big impact this year off the bench was Pat Connaughton, who I remember back in August when the Bucks signed him. I didn't even think he was worthy of a video for a signing. I thought very little, if anything at all, about it. I was like, who's Pat Connaughton? I didn't really care. I didn't really think he was going to get a whole lot of minutes or anything. But he ended up being a really good player for us. He was really good. And he was a guy who could come off the bench and hit threes, and he expanded our offense, and he was a really important player for us down the stretch. And he's also got, the highest vertical I've ever seen a white guy ever have, so there's that, too. And obviously he's a fan favorite because of it, but he's definitely a guy I want back. That's another player that kind of falls in, the guaranteed or not thing. I still don't fully understand that. I'm not really I'm really not that educated on free agency in sports, but I'm just I know the basics obviously, but I'm confused on like what the guaranteed, non-guaranteed, and all that kind of stuff means. And Sterling Brown is also lumped into there, who's another guy who played a similar role to Pat Connaughton. He's a guy who could come off the bench and hit threes really well. But then you've got Nikola Mirotic. Of all the guys the Bucks would re-sign this year, I would feel like Mirotic is probably the least likely. I like Mirotic a lot, but he can be streaky, and truth be told, I really think the Bucks could have done better without him, honestly, in the playoffs, or at least for a few games. I mean, he just didn't seem like he was like that worth it, and I feel like he's going to get a lot of money somewhere else, and I don't really feel like I want to spend that kind of money on Mirotic. I love Mirotic, by the way. I really, really love the guy. He is awesome. He loves being in Milwaukee. In his short time here, he was awesome, but I just don't really see like I don't really see like a reason to keep him. You know, I feel like we could replicate his production with something far cheaper. You know, I really want the Bucks to look and see if they can try and offload Tony Snell's contract somewhere. Like, I like Tony Snell, don't get me wrong, but down the stretch of the season, he got very little minutes, and I don't know, he just didn't, like, he's just another player I feel like you can replicate his production with another contract much cheaper. Like, you could increase Pat Connaughton's role this next year, and he could be, like, the new Tony Snell, and he kind of was for the Bucks back in the playoffs down the stretch, you know? And then, of course, you have the big one, Chris Middleton. Oh boy, what do the Bucks do with Chris Middleton? I don't know. I really don't know about Chris Middleton, you know? The Bucks have a max contract slot this offseason. I know that. Do they really want to use it on Chris Middleton? I mean, there's a lot of guys out there this year. This is a big year for free agency. Imagine if you could lure a Kyrie or a Kemba or maybe even a Kawhi Leonard to Milwaukee with that max contract. Like, I mean, if one of these guys comes knocking at the door, you know, if like one of these guys says, hey, I think Milwaukee is a place I can win a lot of championships with, then by all means, I am willing to give them that over a Chris Middleton. Now, obviously, it's a long stretch because nobody wants to play in Milwaukee or whatever. But, I mean, players that want to win, players that really want to win, who recognize the opportunity for championship-level success in Milwaukee, if one of those guys, if, like, you know, Kyrie or Kawhi or somebody like that was like, hey, I think Milwaukee is a place that I would love to be in and I'd love to win there, then I'm sorry, Chris Middleton, but good luck. You know, like, I'd love to keep Chris Middleton, but is he worth a max contract to me? I just don't know. Like, he's not a guy who can take over basketball games that much. He's not a guy who can really finish around the rim. He's not really a guy who goes lights out every single night. Or, I mean, he has some hot stretches, but he also has a lot of cold stretches. And, yeah, he's valuable. Yeah, he's a good playmaker. Yeah, he's a good defender. But, like, I just feel like I don't know if he's worth that, you know? Like, if you're giving a max contract to Chris Middleton, you are saying we are guaranteed to win a championship with this core. And personally, I think they can win a championship with it. But you have to be 100% certain, because if you mess up the Middleton thing, then you are potentially, like putting your franchise in jeopardy. So, I mean, I just don't know. And, you know, I want, like, imagine if the Bucks had a guy like a Kemba or Kyrie in this playoffs or something. They'd have a guy, and I'm talking about Kyrie, not the crappy Kyrie we saw in the Bucks-Celtics series, but like real Kyrie, you know. They probably would have been able to win the Toronto series. And you know why? Because those guys are like serious difference makers down the stretch. Like when I saw the Bucks offense running their thing down the stretch of games when the chips were down, it was Giannis just trying to have to fight off 3 or 4 guys, and they'd either force a turnover or like he'd be able to kick it out, but they'd be able to close on him in time, you know. Like with that, like you can't just like give all the attention to just Giannis if you have like a true legitimate second superstar on your team. Is Chris Middleton a true legitimate second superstar? Not really, I don't think. he's a really awesome, really nice player who's definitely made his mark on this team in this city, and I love him. And if he leaves, I'm always going to remember the memories he created for us. But can he really be the second guy here? Like, can he really be like that guy that just like helps us over the hump? Like, I don't know. Like, I just like, and if one of those other guys comes calling, I still don't think it's that absurd of a possibility. Like, I realize it's like it might be a long shot, but it's not totally absurd because Milwaukee now has a winning culture and everything. So that's where I'm a little bit confused on. I don't know what they're going to do with all that. Like I said, I don't really want to sign Middleton to a max contract because I really don't think he's worth it. But I also don't want to break up the team, and I also want to have an opportunity at one of those big free agents this summer, to try and get the Bucks, to take the next step. So I don't know. I mean, if Chris Middleton re-signs for the max contract, then you're stuck in place. And then what if the Bucks are just the same thing as they were this year? What if they just cannot get over the hump in the playoffs? Then you just screwed your franchise, and Giannis might leave, and and then you're screwed. Then you're done. Then this opportunity you had is done. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it, though. That's where I really think the Bucks have to prioritize things this offseason, though. That's where they go from here. I do think, even if they get Middleton back and everybody back, I do think they're going to be a better team next year. It's just like I'm still nervous about the playoffs and how, because what Toronto did to us, and Giannis getting a jumper would have changed a lot of things, and I do think he will get better and better as his career goes on, and maybe even he takes a big leap this offseason, but then you're putting a lot of faith in that to happen, and you just don't know if it is or not. But anyways, guys, so that's my thoughts on this, where the Bucks go from here, what they do after the series loss to Toronto. They obviously have an incredibly bright future. They're going to have a chance for the foreseeable future for a title. They have established themselves as contenders this year, and yes, I will call this season a success. It ended very disappointingly, but it was still a success, given the expectations at the beginning of the year. I thought they were going to win 50, 55 games. They went out, won 60 games, came within 2 games of the NBA Finals. So, all in all, that was a successful season for the Bucks. I'm really glad that I got to witness it myself. I'm really glad I got to witness MVP Giannis this year, and hopefully the Bucks come back even stronger next year and make another run at the championship. Anyways, guys, though, thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Obersports41512 and on Instagram, username Jacob_Ober. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Fear the deer.